One of the biggest issues here is that most people living in First Nations communities don't report their sexual assaults. It's still very hush-hush in a lot of those places, so there's very little data to work with. However, one of the best ways that we can get into the issue is to listen carefully to those rarely told stories.
So my experience has happened when I was 6 years old. It went through all the way till my teens, so it happened almost my whole life.
Thomas Lee Jansen didn't share his story until last year, and that's because his abuser told him he'd be killed if he did. And like many survivors of sexual assault, he felt guilty. Jansen finally came out with his story because he felt ready and he had support. But if he were in his home community of Yellow Quill First Nation, he'd have kept quiet.
There's ways to try and get rid of the story. So they try and hide it, make sure no one knows about it, or it spreads like wildfire, gets spread around the community, and the person that felt like they felt comfortable enough to share it feels like, well, why are they gossiping and telling everyone, and why do I feel like I should not have done it, really?
And it's not just an issue of sharing your story or not. Justice is also harder to access.
It makes it so much more complex because if I'm going to report, it's going to be the person I work with's uncle. It's going to be the guy that everyone wanted to date. And so the risk of me not being believed is so much higher in small communities. And then also just getting help is so much more difficult. When you're isolated, for instance, the forensic kits aren't available in lots of communities.
Many survivors often move from their First Nations communities to larger centers like Saskatchewan. Here they can access counseling services and make their own new community. That's what Thomas did. He's now a fashion designer who doesn't identify as either a victim or a survivor. He says he's just Thomas, and what happened to him is part of his story, but not his whole story. Bridget Yard, CBC News, Saskatoon.